Welcome to the Outer Fringe. So glad to be here today with you, Jimmy.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on.
Yeah, of course. And we got Jacob here filling in for Brian. Thanks for sitting in, Jacob.
You're welcome.
I've been actually wanting to ask you to come on the podcast for a while, and I love what you've done for the community here in Boise. And so Jimmy is founder and director of Boise Bicycle Project. You've donated over 6,000 bikes to children.
Almost 7,000. We'll hit 7,000
I was going to say, I bet the number has gone up since I did my research. Yes. And, I just love, I love hearing stories of people that, actually take like a passion project and have the motivation to actually make it a reality. And that's something that's so rad about you. So tell me a little bit about what got you into starting the Boise Bicycle Project. What brought you to where you are?
Oh, geez. Yeah, it's such a long story. We started in 2007. So in a couple of weeks, we will be celebrating our 12-year anniversary. We call it our appreciation party. And we will have all of the people who volunteered, donated, become members, gotten bicycles, be down there at the same time. And it always is such a good reminder of how many people it took to make the Boise Bicycle Project possible. And it really started with just myself and one other guy, Brian Anderson. We both grew up here in Boise. We both spent our entire childhoods riding around bicycles everywhere. We experienced that freedom, that independence, that opportunity from a very young age. And we kind of took it for granted. We didn't realize that our childhood and our experience on a bicycle wasn't the same as a lot of other people in Boise and beyond. And we started fighting fires together on the Idaho City Hot Shots in like 2004, 2005. And I didn't know him, but when we got to know each other, we started to realize we have a really similar story. We both grew up here. We both, had bicycles for our birthdays or Christmas time or whatever it was going to be at a young age. We both grew up working in bicycle shops, and we were both sort of uncomfortable with what we were seeing when we were working at bike shops, in that there were so many people who needed a bicycle for transportation. And they would come into the shop and they couldn't afford the bicycles that were there, or they already had a bicycle and they would come to the counter. I was a mechanic, and they would say, hey, I need to get my bicycle fixed, and it was going to cost more to fix their bicycle than what it was actually worth, or more than they had. And in some cases, they needed something fixed, and we could take it around behind the smoke and curtains, turn a couple screwdrivers, and give it back to them, charge them $60 for this tune-up that we could have taught them how to do in just a tiny little moment. So as Brian and I started sharing these stories with each other and realizing that we had this in common, when we started to recognize that there were a lot of kids in our community who never had that access to a bicycle that we had growing up, we decided that we had to do something. So on a fire in Sun Valley, the Castle Rock fire, like the resort was burning down, and we got it out. And in a high profile fire like that, they don't let anybody leave just in case something pops back up, because they know all eyes are going to be watching. So we just sat around on this fire for about a week, and we started to put together this idea for the Boise Bicycle Project. And then at the end of the fire season, we had made enough money that we didn't have to have jobs anywhere else, and we would dedicate all of our time towards building this idea. And we started finding kids in our own neighborhoods who didn't have bicycles, and we would fix up ones that we would purchase from the thrift store or that we'd find at the dump, and get those to them. And then pretty soon, the word just started catching on. People heard about what we were doing. They had a bicycle in their garage. They wanted to help out. They wanted to learn how to fix a bicycle. And ever since then, in 2007, it's just been growing like wildfire.
That's so awesome. And, the great thing about it, too, is it's really helped build community. And, that's one of the things that I love about. So you're running for city council.
Yes, that's my newest.
Yes, this is the latest venture of Jimmy. And, that's the biggest thing that I think that we really need to start striving for, is building more community. And I love that where you come from is such a perfect place and such a platform for just kind of being able to just bring people together.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I discovered really early on, is that I was born and raised here in Boise, and I thought I knew who my community was, what my community was. And when I started working at the Boise Bicycle Project, I realized that I had no idea how many people were in my community that I didn't even know about, how many people grew up without a bicycle, how many people grew up with all these different barriers and obstacles to overcome that I didn't have to face. And as we opened up our shop and invited everybody in, and it's always kind of been our motto that everyone is welcome and all bikes belong, we started to share space with people in our community that were invisible to me before. People from our refugee population, people who were experiencing homelessness, people who were getting released from prison, and everywhere in between. And what we would find is that as we shared space and as we taught them how to work on bicycles, they were teaching us things as well. It was an exchange. So we were learning from them and they were learning from us at the same time, and we were all growing because of it. And so that was sort of one of like the unintended consequences of what we started at the Bike Project, was that we had this tremendous access to so many people who live here in Boise who have so much value to bring to the table. And we have all benefited because of it. So it is this incredible shared space where everyone is welcome and everybody gets to grow together.
Right. And you've also gone overseas and helped people in other countries too have access to bikes as well, right?
Yeah. A couple years ago, I went to Haiti.
Yeah.
And we had been distributing, we get a lot of bicycles donated to the Boise Bicycle Project. Some of them we can't fix up, but they're not bad bikes. They're just they take too much time for us to fix up, and when there's one bike that's going to take us 1 hour and another one that's going to take 3, that 3-hour bike never gets fixed up. So we were sending a lot of those bicycles to Sierra Leone and Ghana with another nonprofit called Village Bicycle Project, and that project ended up sort of going under. And so we had this huge inventory of bicycles building up, and we didn't know where to send them, and it was just breaking my heart when I saw them going to the landfill, because I knew the impact that they could have on different people all around the world. And I ended up going to Haiti, thinking that, okay, we're sending these bicycles all the way across the ocean, and we've got Haiti that's 300 miles off the coast of Miami, the highest level of poverty in the Western Hemisphere. What can we do there? But I also didn't want to go down and say like, hey, I'm going to come down here and solve all of your problems. I know all the barriers that you're facing. It's absolutely not. So I went down there to learn, to figure out what sort of bicycle community exists there already. Do they have bicycles? Do they have access to bicycle repair? Do they have access to bicycle repair supplies? If they had bicycles, or if they had these things, would that create additional opportunities or not? So I spent almost a month there. I didn't know anybody. I just kind of went down and found hospitals, churches, schools, community centers that I could show up with tools and repair supplies and teach classes to kids, and try to figure out what that bicycle culture was. And it was a life-changing experience. I felt like I learned so much about resilience, about language, about universal language. I didn't know Haitian Creole when I went down there, but I was learning it from these kids. But there was this universal language of like teaching people things like, here's a tool, let's do a hand movement, let's make a zoop sound, and you can tell which direction we're going to turn this tool. And again, we're learning from each other at the same time. At some point, I would love to go back to Haiti and really figure out what the opportunity is there. Because what I discovered when I came back is that you can't just send stuff to people without actually figuring out a way for it to help create jobs. So if we're sending tons of clothes or rice or whatever it may be to some of these developing countries, and they already have merchants who are selling clothes or making clothes or growing rice, you're basically taking those jobs away from those people, and you're actually hurting their economy by doing that. And so with bicycles, what you would have to make sure is that if you're sending these bikes or these parts down there, that you're not actually taking away the jobs from the people who are selling them on the street, but figuring out a way to create jobs for people. And so what a partnership would potentially look like would be you would find another local organization there who was already doing this, who was already selling these things, but providing them with additional resources so that they could make sure that they could turn those into jobs, and that those bicycles that they were giving away would help people become more entrepreneurial in their efforts. So it was one of those things, and that I really learned from the Bike Project, is you can't just assume that you know the way to fix somebody else's problems or issues if you have no concept of what those issues actually are, or the barriers that people face. And by sharing space down at BBP, we have been able to help so many people in the community because we've made the first effort to understand them and to get to know them and to know that they're important and that they have value before we just jump in and say, we're here to help and solve all your problems. And and we're the superior person here, and you're the person who needs help. It's like, no, this is an exchange. How can we figure out a way where we're working together so that both of us benefit at the same time?
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, Jimmy, I've been in Boise since 2004, and so I've known about you guys for years, and I was just wondering if you could tell us what's been like the biggest hurdle in getting the Boise Bicycle Project started, or getting the word out, or just some of the bureaucratic, maybe red tape that's been difficult.
Well, you have been one of the people that have been around forever, and that's one of the fun things about running the bike project. We started in 2007. We used to operate out of an old abandoned homeless shelter, and it really has been the support from people like you and other people in the community who've just figured out, this is how I can help in some sort of small way or some sort of big way. And I would like to say that, like, there was this huge obstacle, and I don't know how we overcame it. The community has always been so supportive of the bike project. Is absolutely unbelievable. What we were doing really resonated. And I think it was that combination of what we do that's so tangible. There's a broken bicycle, there's a volunteer, they're fixing it, there's a happy kid, and they're getting this experience of freedom that most people can relate to if they've had that same experience on a bicycle. And so the support that we've gotten has been unbelievable. And I think a lot of the barriers that a lot of organizations face, we've overcome just by asking the community for help and people coming out of the woodwork to give that help. Now, the barrier that we do face all the time is that we donate thousands of bicycles to kids. We donate almost 1,000 every single year at this point. We're almost at 7,000. We fixed over 17,000 bicycles and distributed those to kids and adults from all sorts of different walks of life. And we give them a helmet, we give them a light, we give them a lock, and we have people go through a safety class. And now they're out there riding on the roads. And our real big obstacle is, how can we figure out a way to make sure that they actually have a safe place to ride? And so as I was coming out here today, I passed by this the library on 5 Mile and Victory. And I was out there recently for a neighborhood association meeting. I had ridden my bicycle out there, and we donate a lot of bikes to kids who live in this area. And I was riding my bike out there, and for the first time in maybe 2 or 3 years, I started riding on the sidewalk. And I'm usually very comfortable riding on the road, no matter where I'm at. But at 5 o'clock during rush hour at 45-mile-an-hour traffic with no real shoulder, I had to hop on the sidewalk to get to the library. And then in some spots, there weren't sidewalks at all. And I got to this neighborhood association meeting, and I started talking to the people there, and they couldn't believe that I'd actually ridden my bicycle. They thought I was insane. They live a quarter mile away from the library, and they do not allow their kids to walk or ride to this community resource, this community center that is our library. And the library was empty. And when we have neighborhoods where our kids aren't safe enough because of traffic and because of the way the roads are designed to actually get to something as basic as a library, that's an issue. And so that's the barrier that we still face today, is that we're trying to create these opportunities for these kids and these families. We're trying to create connection through the community. And if there isn't a safe landscape for them to ride on, in some cases we're putting them at danger. So it's a large responsibility that we have to make sure that we're doing that part as well.
Okay.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, when I lived in Miami and I would bike to work, it was terrifying. I couldn't even cross the street without, like, wondering if somebody was just going to turn the corner and almost hit me, because there were so many people that got hit all the time. And there was a lot of people that relied on biking places there, and it's just not bike friendly at all, at all. And, Boise's bike friendly, but still you have a growing city, you have more people are distracted, they're texting and driving, I mean, as a parent, I would be terrified too. And it's kind of sad when you grew up, like I grew up being able to bike everywhere. Like, I mean, we just had to come home when the streetlights came on, but like we were just off on our bikes. That's what we did. And, we never had that fear of like, you're going to get hit by, I mean, you obviously have to watch, but like, it wasn't like this constant fear of, you're just going to get run down by a car.
No, and you probably didn't even wear a helmet at the time.
No, a helmet? Yeah. No way, man. I like the breeze in my hair.
Our rules were be home by dinner and be nice to others. And that was the only 2 real rules that I can remember growing up with. And you would disappear on your bicycle. And as long as you like slid back into your seat by the time dinner, dinner was served, then you were usually just fine. And the kids weren't wearing helmets at that point. And we didn't really put this emphasis or the ownership of being safe only on the cyclist. And that's one of the problems that we have now, is that we oftentimes blame the victim, the person that was hurt, for the crash happening. And you see it reported on the news all the time. It will say, and they were or they weren't wearing their helmet. It's like, well, that doesn't have anything to do with it. How did the person get hit in the first place? Was the person texting while they were driving? Did they not see them? Was the sun in their eyes? What was the leading into that crash? And we try really hard not to call them accidents because they're preventable. What are the preventable things that are going on? And if you just say, oh, it was just an accident, it's like, well, then we're not actually solving the issue here. And in Boise, where we live, we have this extra barrier in that the city that we live in, the city of Boise, doesn't own its own streets. So the Ada County Highway Department owns and manages the streets in Boise. And so if our city council, if our mayor, if they want the city to be more bicycle friendly, they don't actually have the ability to take on that initiative on their own. They rely on the county to do it. And our county is not really typically of that same mindset. They want faster speeds. They want more lanes. They want to move more traffic through. And that's fine until you hit this tipping point. And once you hit this tipping point where there's only so many cars that you can fit on the street anymore, if you're not doing things to reduce the amount of cars, or at least give people options to take public transportation, to walk, to bike, or to live close to places where they can work and play and shop and dine, then you're only going to have more and more traffic congestion. And we know people are getting more and more distracted on the roads, and we're not designing the roads in a way to serve all types of users. And so it's becoming a scary place to ride on the road when you're in a growing city. And the cities really have to get ahead of the game and make early investments to make sure that we're prioritizing safety, human lives, before how fast somebody can get to and from work.
Yeah. So, running for city council is that kind of something that you really want to focus on, is just building more community? Because I remember we talked about that a little bit, being able to be in a space where you can be close to work and have your dining nearby, and just have kind of that, so you're not having to travel far. What is something that you could see implementing to make change as far as getting people to do that more?
So the average household in Boise is taking 10 vehicle trips per day. And that's somewhat common around our national average, especially kind of in our northwest areas where we have a lot of sprawl. People live a long ways away from different types of things. In our more eastern cities, our urban ones, and of course that's a little bit different, but 10 trips per household per day. And really our goal isn't to eliminate people driving. Our goal is to reduce those amount of trips. So how can we get that down to 6? How can we get that down to 4? Knowing that somebody may have to drive all the way across town to get to work, but once they get home, that there's a park nearby that they can walk to or that they can ride to, or that there's a restaurant that they can go visit, or that they can do their shopping in a closer period or a closer space, or they have the ability to take public transportation on some of those trips. So we never want to tell people we're going to eliminate cars. It's no, let's see what we can do to reduce those amount of trips. A lot of it's zoning, a lot of it's code, a lot of it's making sure that when a development comes in with 300, 400 houses, that it's also zoned commercial, so that there's going to be amenities for people to go to as well. One of the things that I'm working on really hard at the Boise Bicycle Project and with the campaign is to continue the tradition of the Boise Greenbelt. This year we're celebrating 50-year anniversary of the Boise Greenbelt, this incredible community-led effort that saved our river, turned it from a cesspool to a place that people actually want to float down. How can we continue that legacy? By expanding that network along our canal access roads. So the Boise River runs through the middle of town, and throughout the city, it spurs off into canals where we irrigate our different farmland, our yards, and all sorts of stuff like that. Every single one of those canals has a maintenance road that goes right next to it. And what we're seeing is that in cities across the country, they are using these canal access roads as multi-use paths for walking, biking, all sorts of different things. And for folks who live out here who have kids who may not be able to ride to the Greenbelt, there's still a canal that's within about a quarter mile of every single household in Boise. It's crazy how the network of canals that we have in this city and the huge opportunity that we have to turn those roads that are already there into places where people can walk and ride. It was about a month ago, there was a kid on 5 Mile and Victory, really close to where we're at right now, that was killed while he was riding his bicycle. Somebody didn't see him, I'm not sure why, and hit him, and the kid was killed. He was within 200 yards of a canal. And so we get really worried about kids playing in the canal and getting hurt in the canal, but kids are getting killed on the road every single day. And if we had this network and the infrastructure is already in place to make it possible for kids to go to the places they need to go, or for families to walk and ride on these areas in a safe, open space that's pleasant, then we could actually be eliminating some of the deaths that we're seeing on the road as well, and creating those connections within our community. That's something that our city could do. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, and some people will say, oh, that'll be too hard, you'll have to work with these irrigation districts. It's like, come on, we did the Boise Greenbelt 50 years ago. This is not going to be as hard as that was, and we managed to get that done. So this is a community that can do hard things. It's a matter of if we come together and if we bring the right people to the table to do it. And I absolutely believe that we can do those hard things, and we should do those hard things. And so that would be one of the, to reduce those amount of trips, that would be one of the things that we could do to make it so that people weren't taking 10 trips per day, that we were lowering the amount of emissions, the amount of pollutions that are in the air, and that we're really creating the possibility for people to enjoy a healthy lifestyle no matter what part of town that they live in.
Right. And that's one of the things we talked about too, is that, instead of putting all our focus on kind of these global issues, political issues, national political issues, really getting involved in the community and getting involved in local politics, or just, just going and, getting involved with more of like the community politics, or
if you want to create change, you start local. Right?
Yeah, like city council meetings, things like that. Like how would somebody get involved and get more involved in that?
Well, so many times now we hear this stuff on the national news, and it's heartbreaking, and like it sucks out your soul, and it takes away your energy.
Feel defeated.
And so then you go to the Capitol steps and you make your sign and you rally and you have that solidarity, and that solidarity is important, but rarely does that actually create change.
Right.
And so it's important to go do those things. It's important to make sure that our voices are still heard, but then it's also important to invest that same amount of time and energy to the things that are actually going to have an impact. And we may not be able to affect racism on a national level, but you can absolutely affect it in your local neighborhood association.
Right.
I've been riding my bicycle to every single neighborhood association in town as part of my campaign, because I want to make sure that I'm getting to know the people and the issues and stuff that people are facing all throughout the city. And some of the stuff that you hear in these neighborhood associations, well, in some cases it's beautiful and it's the most amazing thing, and you hear people who are passionate about their community and they're really trying to do stuff. But I was in one neighborhood association, and I left, and the lady came out, one of the ladies who was on the board came out afterward, and she said, hey, you don't really believe what you said in there. I was like, what did I say in there? And she said that all people have value.
Oh my God, I can't get over that.
And I was like, yes, I absolutely believe that all people have value. I know it. I've experienced it every single day. And she said, well, they don't. She goes, most people don't have value. Most people don't have anything worthwhile to bring to the table. And I was like, you know what, I think we're going to disagree with that one. But this is somebody who is sitting on the board of a neighborhood association in the city that we live on. And this is somebody who probably hasn't had access to the same privilege that I've had to work with the people that I've seen that have value every single day. I don't know who she's interacting with that she doesn't think that they do. But I know that they do. I've had that privilege. I've had that opportunity. Yeah, exactly. And so if people wanted to get involved in their neighborhood associations, they would be balancing out that voice.
Yeah.
They would be making sure that when there was a new development that was coming in, that was rentals, that was affordable housing, that instead of that neighborhood fighting to keep it away from there because they don't want any quote unquote poor people living in their neighborhood, that you would be in there saying, no, we do want these affordable housing units in our neighborhood. We want to make sure that everybody has the ability to grow up and thrive and live here. And so you can start local. I am convinced that if we had 4 young people, and when I say young, I'm going to mean 45 and under, maybe 50 and under, join every single neighborhood association in town, and work with the people who've been on there for a long time so that, we can take that historical knowledge, we can bring new ideas to the table, we can bring conversations like privilege and race into the discussion and make sure that we're actually talking about those things and having those hard discussions at neighborhood levels. We would create change in this community. And while that may not have an effect on the national level, it is one of those things that would continue to spread. And that's where we can have that impact. A lot of people do that by getting involved in the nonprofit sector. And they get involved with these nonprofits, and they learn so much, and they're able to make a difference, and they grow and they benefit because of it. So you go volunteer for a nonprofit, you are of course helping somebody, but you're also helping yourself as well, because you're growing and you're learning along the way. So getting involved in neighborhood associations, local nonprofits, school boards, making sure that the voices who aren't at the table have somebody who's fighting for them or helping to understand why aren't they at the table? What are the barriers that are preventing renters in our neighborhood from coming here and advocating for themselves? How can I help bring those people in? And that's really, I think, where we've got to start in our own city.
Absolutely. Did you have any experience working in a nonprofit before you started? Because didn't you just study up on it and start just researching it while you were fighting fires? And
I had no idea what a nonprofit even was. I was working on a mass communications degree and an education degree at Boise State University, and during this process of Brian and I, the other co-founder, talking about this idea for the Boise Bicycle Project, someone was like, yeah, it should be a nonprofit. And I was like, yeah, it should be a nonprofit. I had no idea what they were talking about.
Right.
We basically, once we had come up with this idea, we found some other nonprofits in town who were willing to be mentors to us and kind of guide us along the way, and started teaching us about this sector. And it's like, how do you go through high school and college, and at no point has anybody taught you anything about the nonprofit sector and how it impacts our community? All you really know is that, well, I think that there's like the Red Cross and there's a couple of other ones out there, and nobody knows what they really are. And there was such an entrepreneurial opportunity to take the things that I had learned working in a bike shop, and more from like a business point of view and a communications point of view, and leverage those into what was kind of an antiquated nonprofit sector, I felt like, at the time when we started. And because we didn't know anything, we were kind of inventing things as we went, a new way of doing things outside this traditional model, while also making sure that we had this input and this help from people who had been there for a long time. So we created a really unique nonprofit in the process, BBP, that has an earned income model, that takes a few more risks than a traditional nonprofit would, because we don't have to rely on donors. And if we take a stand for refugees in our community, we don't have to worry about the one racist donor who isn't going to donate $20,000 to us anymore because they don't want refugees to be here. And so we sort of, we did things our own way. And I think that not having that experience was actually a really helpful thing. And since then, I've had this great opportunity to work with a bunch of different teachers and students at Boise State who are interested in the nonprofit sector, or they want to be entrepreneurs that have a good component that benefits the community. It's like, well, why not just do it as a nonprofit to begin with? And it's fun to like challenge this idea of like, oh, let's do a Tom's like buy one give one social good model. It's like, oh, let's do a Tom's thing where we're actually going to build shoes with the sole intention of not getting rich, but helping people who don't have shoes, and not doing it as a marketing scheme, but actually doing it as
taking the money out of it, and
taking the money out of it and doing it for the right reasons, and knowing that, like, yes, we do need to be able to make a living doing this at the same time, but we're not doing good as a marketing platform. We're doing good because that's what we should be doing.
And that's where the money comes, is when you're doing it, following your heart and doing something that you're passionate about, and, being good to those around you.
Oh, yeah. That's
a huge thing.
Absolutely. It is a huge thing. And I'll still go into different businesses. They'll have me come in and present, and I'll tell them about the bike project and all the things that we've done and all the different programs that we have. And at the end, there will always be a question. Somebody will say, so what do you actually do for a real job? And you're like, nope. That's my real job. And they're like, well, we thought you said it was a nonprofit. And it's like, well, just because it's a nonprofit doesn't mean that we can't pay people, and that we can't pay people livable wages as well. Right. So we have 17 employees at the Boise Bicycle Project now, and they have benefits, they have health care, they have retirement. Like, we try to make sure that we take care of them so that they can stay with us in that area. And it is a lot of work, and it is it is a job of passion, and people should be getting paid more for what they do.
Right.
But it absolutely it is a real job, and people don't realize that. People who are making six figures have no idea that there's folks who are working, that my job full time is working at the bike project. They think that I'm, selling real estate on the side or something like that. But it's like, no, it's my real job.
Oh man.
So, I was wondering, so you said 17 employees, full-time employees.
Yep.
How many volunteers then, or how does that volunteer structure look like?
Sure. So we have 17 staff. I think 5 of them, or 6 of them are full-time, and the rest are part-time. And their job are to be educators for our volunteers, or for other people who are coming in using the shop. And we probably have, I would say, 500 or so volunteers who are volunteering on a 3 or more times a year basis. And we're usually getting about 1,200 volunteers a year total when we talk about our large events like our Holiday Kids Bike Giveaway or Boise Go Ahead Fest or things like that. So we have this huge volunteer support network, and they're really the ones who are building most of the bikes that we're donating to kids and to families in need, because you can't do that with 17 employees. Like, you need a group of people to do it. And it's sort of that teach a person to fish sort of model, where if we can teach somebody to work on a bicycle, then they can be doing that, and they can teach somebody else how to do it, and we can really kind of grow that impact exponentially. The first year, 2007, when it was just Brian and I think we donated 43 bikes, and now we're hitting 1,000 almost every single year, and we only do that because of the help of our volunteers, who are either working on bikes or who are helping us with marketing or graphic design or whatever skills people have to bring to the table. One of the things that we try to do really or try to push really hard is that everybody has something to offer. And if you want to work on bikes, that's great. We already know how to do that, but there's probably skills that you have that we don't have. So we'll take those skills as well. And we've been so fortunate to have that kind of support from the community.
So how do people receive donated bikes? Is there an application that they go through? How do you end up finding the people that need the bikes?
So that's my favorite part of what we do.
Yeah.
That's a yes and question. So yes, there is an application that the kids fill out, and those are given to those kids through a different nonprofit, a teacher, a social worker, sometimes a church, somebody else in the community who is helping us identify the kids who need bicycles the most. So we can fix the bicycles, we can give them away, we can teach the safety classes, we can do all those things, but we really rely on our nonprofit partners to find the kids who are in situations where they wouldn't be able to get a bicycle otherwise. And then they give these kids these applications, and they write their name, their height, their 2 favorite colors, and then there's a big blank spot for them to draw a picture of their dream bike.
Yeah.
And these kids draw the picture of their dream bike, and then we use those drawings to pick out the bicycles that we're going to give them. And the drawings they're terrible. I mean, you try to draw a bicycle and it's not going to look very good, but you got these 4-year-olds and these 5-year-olds who are drawing
So
these
cute.
like Dr. Seuss, like impossible looking bicycles, and then they get the bike that day and it flies and it's got all these things. And then they get their bicycle and they say, oh, this is exactly like the picture that I drew. And like, you hold the bicycle up next to it and you're like, yep, it's exactly like the picture.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I saw your TED Talks and I saw the drawing that the kid had done.
They're adorable. They're my
I
favorite things in the world. And I haven't thrown like a single one of them away. I don't know what we're going to do with them, but we've got like this stack. It's like a whole filing cabinet of over 5,000 pictures of bicycles
amazing.
that these kids have drawn. And I can't throw them away. I think that they're too incredible, because in the kids' heads, they're drawing that picture, but they're also thinking about all the places that they're going to go now on this bicycle, on this dream bicycle that they have. And then when they get it, you see that look in their eye, and the look in their eye is like they are looking into the future. They're looking into the distance, and like you can see like the gears turning in their head and all the places that they're going to go kind of unfolding. And we get to see that every single day. Sometimes people ask, like, do you ever get burned out? Like, is it hard? And it absolutely is hard. But every single day, we get to see our bicycles make an impact on someone. We get to see that look in their eyes. We get to see barriers being broken down. And we know what we're doing is working. We're really lucky to have that at our nonprofit, because not every nonprofit does. Some people are working so far into the future or the long game, or they're dealing with issues like mental health where they don't get to see those victories every single day, and it is freaking hard. and it's not tangible, and it's hard for the community to jump on board with them. And we are so lucky to have that tangible aspect. But because we do, we also know that we have a responsibility to address those other issues as well, whether it is mental health or whether it's prejudice that's in our community or whatever it might be. We have this gateway, this universal thing, the bicycle, to address some of those issues and to make sure that we're supporting our other nonprofits at the same time.
That's awesome. So what does a bike symbolize to you?
Well, so freedom is the word that everybody always says. And it doesn't,
Yep.
I've presented all across the country. I've presented in Haiti. I mean, everywhere I go, you can ask people what that feeling that you felt when you rode your bicycle for the first time or that you felt as a kid. And you can let it pause, and somebody in the audience will say freedom. For me, it's really more about connection. What we try to do at BBP, and really what my goal is to connect people to their community and to each other. And it just so happens that a bicycle is an incredible way to do that. And so I ride my bicycle all the time. I love it. And I love the bicycles that we donate to these kids. But what I really love to think about are all the places that they're going to go. The community center that they didn't have access to otherwise, the library that they couldn't get to, the job that they needed to find, after school programs that the bus isn't going to be able to take them to, and the parents who are either a no car or a single car family that they might not be able to go. It's the places that those bicycles will connect the kids that I absolutely love. And a lot of times those are our other nonprofits. And so we know that we play one small role in trying to break down some of the barriers and the obstacles that our kids and our families face. And if we can help them connect to another nonprofit, another resource, and if we can help them do that safely, we know that we're doing our part of that job.
Yeah. And you're getting kids to be active, because I feel like, especially in society today, it's, there's so much screen time, and getting outside and being active is such an important part of being a child. It's where our imagination comes, and I just, my childhood was always filled with riding my bike everywhere. Like, that's what I did. And I just think it's, especially the future generation coming in, they need more of that.
So, Jimmy, looking forward into the coming years of Boise Bicycle Project, what do you see as kind of one of the next immediate projects coming up, or one of the next dreams you have for the outfit?
Well, we talked a little bit about the canals earlier, and that's definitely one of the major things that we will be working on, is trying to create safer networks for our kids to get around our city. And so that will be a huge part of what we do. The other thing that I'm really excited about right now is that we have a lot of partnerships with the Idaho Department of Corrections, where we go out and we teach inmates how to fix mostly kids' bicycles. And then those kids' bicycles go into our programs, and we donate them to all sorts of different kids from different nonprofits. And the incredible thing about this program is that while people are incarcerated, while they are removed from the community, we are finding a way to get them re-engaged and to keep that engagement while they're incarcerated. So when they go out, they don't feel like they have been completely removed from something else. And once the people who are in these programs, once they fix 15 bicycles that we donate to kids, that earns them a bicycle for future transportation needs. And that way, the day that they get out of prison, there is a bicycle waiting for them at BBP to help them along the next steps of their journey. And we've been doing this for about 2 or 3 years now. It's absolutely incredible. I love it. The women that we work with, they actually come down to the shop. They get to take like a field trip when we give those bikes away to the kids, and they get to be part of the process of donating the bikes that they've worked on. Everybody cries every single time. And right now we're in the process of doing the same thing at the men's facility. And the men are in there for typically longer periods of time than the women. The crimes tend to be a little bit larger. And because they're in there for longer, we have the ability to get to the point where we're teaching real job skills. And one of the things that we find in any of the prison populations that we work with, that idle time and disconnection is the worst enemy. And if you can give people something productive to do, proactive to do, and something where they're learning things, they tend to do much better. And what we're trying to figure out right now is how we can take this program at the men's facility to turn it into real vocational training to the point where it would be a federally registered apprenticeship program, so that by the time that they were released, they would have an actual certification that would allow them to go and get almost instant employment at any bicycle shop in Boise, or really any other place that is going to be using different hands-on problem-solving skills that they learn by working on bikes at the same time. Our people who are incarcerated are one of our most disadvantaged communities that we work with. The barriers that they've faced growing up lead to them being incarcerated in the first place. Almost every single woman that we work with is a victim of sexual or domestic abuse, and usually as a result of that abuse, that abuse led to the crime that got them convicted in the first place. Some people are in there for things that maybe some of us have done who are sitting at this table right now, including myself, or that our friends have done, but didn't have the support system to put us back on the right track. And then when they get out, if it's not hard enough to figure out how to navigate your way through society already, they've got this extra burden that they have to deal with. If we can help break down that stigmatism by showing how much they care about the community, even while they're incarcerated, if we can help them gain job skills, if we can help them gain confidence, we really feel like there's something that we can do for this very, very underserved and undervalued portion of our community. And so that's one of the things I think that I'm most excited about, because I see so much potential there. And I also get to spend time with them. I teach a lot of the classes at the men's facility and the women's facility. And these are not terrible people. These are people who made a really big mistake and didn't have a support system and grew up with a set of circumstances that I didn't have to. And when I'm around them, I always have to question, like, if I would have grown up in their same circumstances, would I be standing where they are? And the answer is yes, absolutely, I would be. And so because I'm not, what opportunity do I have? What responsibility do I have to help create a pathway that's better for them when they get out?
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I think that's such a big thing too with just the marginalization of people once they have that label slapped on them, and then they feel undervalued and they come out already feeling like they're fighting. It's like this fighting feeling. But if you give them a sense of value and give them something that they can have, be confident about, that can really change people and have such a big impact. And, I think the drug and alcohol epidemic, as far as, but people are just, what is it they say, like everyone's walking around in quiet desperation. And I think that's, a huge thing too. And then you're surrounded by people all day that are kind of in the same boat. Yeah, I think that is definitely a really important thing to be focusing on for sure.
When we know that we can be a safe space for them when they get out as well, because we don't know what situations they're going back into, what support systems they have. And so if we can establish those relationships while they are incarcerated, and if we can get them familiar with our shop and the people who work there, then we can make sure that we can remain a place that's open for them. And because we work with so many other nonprofits, we know the other resources that are available to offer help as well. And so we have this great opportunity. And that's one of the things I think that is so beautiful about the nonprofit sector. It doesn't matter what part of it you're in, you know that there's more than one issue that most people face, and that you have to work collaboratively to solve these larger societal issues. And I wish that more folks in our public and our private and our governmental sectors could understand that power of collaboration and working together. And this isn't an area where we're competing. This is an area where we're all working together so that we can all grow together.
And that's what builds community. Well, thank you so much, Jimmy, for coming in today. And thank you, Jacob, for sitting in for Brian.
Sure. Thanks, Jimmy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to see you.
You too.
Jimmy Hallyburton for
Boise City Council. Is that what you're going to say?
Well, I was going to have you say it. Okay. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Thanks again.
The Outer Fringe was recorded at Triii-Point Studios. Copyright 2019. All rights reserved. Statements and opinions made on the show do not necessarily reflect the views or beliefs of Triii-Point Studios or its members.